In a world where wealth and power often command respect, one story reminds us how fragile human dignity can be, especially when prejudice blinds compassion. This is the story of a 14-year-old boy named Johnson, and a billionaire whose arrogance would collide with humanity on the side of a quiet suburban road. What happened that day started with nothing more than a flat tire, but it exposed something much deeper: the unspoken weight of racism in modern America. Johnson was only 14 years old, a teenager with wide eyes, restless energy, and dreams that stretched far beyond the limits of his neighborhood. He was the kind of boy who believed in possibility, who imagined that with enough effort, kindness, and honesty, he could make something of himself. But Johnson was also black, and in America, that detail often carried consequences far heavier than any child should have to bear. He lived with his mother in a small rented apartment. She worked long shifts at a diner, often coming home tired but determined to keep the light of hope alive for her son. Johnson's father had been gone for years, leaving behind only a faded photograph and unanswered questions. Johnson's world was small but alive. School, basketball at the crack neighborhood court, and the occasional after-school job helping older neighbors with groceries or lawns. But what he lacked in privilege, he made up for with resilience. On the other side of town, in a sprawling mansion shielded by iron gates, lived Charles Whitmore. A billionaire, self-made, at least in the way newspapers described him. But beneath the surface was a man hardened by greed and convinced of his own superiority. Whitmore didn't just have wealth. He carried with him the arrogance of believing money separated him from ordinary people. And more than that, he carried prejudice. A quiet but venomous racism that shaped how he saw the world and the people in it. Their worlds should never have collided, but fate has a way of drawing unlikely lines together. And on one ordinary afternoon, destiny placed a flat tire in Whitmore's path, and Johnson directly in his way. It was a bright afternoon, the kind where the sun pressed against the pavement and the air shimmered with heat. Johnson had been walking home from the library, a book tucked under his arm. As he turned a corner, he noticed a sleek black Bentley pulled over by the side of the road. Its hazard lights flashed rhythmically. A man stood beside it, cursing under his breath, staring down at a tire that sagged lifelessly against the rim. Charles Whitmore, dressed in a tailored suit, gold watch gleaming, frustration carved deep into his face. Johnson slowed, his natural instinct tugging at him. He knew how to change a tire. He had helped an older neighbor with it just last summer. And despite Whitmore being a stranger, Johnson felt that familiar pull to help. His mother had always told him, "Kindness is free, Johnson. Always give it." So he approached, cautious but polite. "Sir," Johnson said, his voice steady but respectful, "looks like you've got a flat. I can help you with that if you'd like." Whitmore's eyes shifted. For a moment he didn't even respond. He scanned Johnson up and down, the skin color, the worn sneakers, and the second-hand shirt. Then with a sharpness that stung, he scoffed. "You?" he sneered. "A kid like you? Do you even know what this car is worth? I don't need some street boy scratching up my Bentley." The words landed heavy, not just in tone but in intent. It wasn't just dismissal. It was disdain. Johnson swallowed, his instincts telling him to walk away. But his heart told him to stand his ground. "I know how to fix it," he said quietly. "It won't take long." Whitmore's laugh was cold. "Fix it? The only thing you people know how to fix is trouble." And just like that, the mask slipped. The racism came not as an explosion, but as a cutting whisper, sharp enough to draw blood without raising a hand. This was the moment where a simple flat tire became something much bigger. Because racism rarely shows itself in shouts or banners. More often, it lives in casual cruelty, in dismissals, in the small but brutal words that remind someone they are unwelcome. Johnson was only 14, but in that moment he was carrying the weight of generations. Whitmore pulled out his phone, dialing a number, muttering about calling roadside service. But the reception was poor and the line wouldn't connect. His frustration grew, boiling over into muttered curses. Johnson stood there, book still under his arm, every second of silence pressing against him. He could have walked away. He should have walked away. But something in him, a stubborn mix of pride and empathy, kept him rooted. "I can fix it," Johnson repeated softly. "You just need a jack and I'll do the rest." Whitmore turned sharply, his voice dripping with venom. "Why are you still here? Do you think I need charity from the likes of you? Get away from my car before someone thinks you're trying to steal it." The words cut deeper than Whitmore could ever know. Because Johnson wasn't just hearing Whitmore, he was hearing echoes of every stereotype, every insult, and every time someone looked at him and saw only what they feared, not who he was. But Johnson didn't move. He couldn't. Because if he walked away, he would carry that shame with him forever. Whitmore struggled with the jack, fumbling clearly out of his depth. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His expensive shoes scuffed against the pavement. Every failed attempt fueled his anger. And then, almost inevitably, the jack slipped. The car jolted. Whitmore stumbled backward, nearly falling. Johnson instinctively dropped his book and lunged forward, steadying the jack with his small hands. His fingers gripped tight, his body straining with effort. Whitmore froze. For the first time, he saw the boy not as a nuisance, but as someone holding up the weight of his failure. "I told you!" Johnson panted. "I can do this." The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken tension. And then, slowly, reluctantly, Whitmore stepped back. "Fine," he muttered. "Do it, but if you scratch it—" Johnson ignored him. He worked methodically, just as he remembered, loosening the bolts, swapping the tire, tightening each one with care. His small frame bent against the car, his sweat mixing with grease. It wasn't easy, but he didn't stop. When it was done, Johnson stepped back, breathing hard. "There," he said simply. "It's fixed." For a long moment, Whitmore said nothing. He stared at the boy, this 14-year-old black teenager who had done what he couldn't. His pride bristled, his prejudice screamed for him to dismiss it. But reality was undeniable. Still, instead of gratitude, Whitmore sneered. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a $100 bill, and tossed it at Johnson's feet. "There. That should cover your little service." The note fluttered on the pavement, an insult disguised as payment. Johnson looked down, then up. His chest rose and fell, and with quiet dignity, he said, "I didn't do it for money." He left the bill where it lay, picked up his book, and walked away. Whitmore watched him go, a strange unease stirring in his chest, because for the first time he wasn't sure who had really fixed what was broken that day. What happened on that roadside wasn't just about a tire. It was about power, about prejudice, about the courage of a boy who refused to be diminished. Johnson walked away that day with nothing in his pocket, but everything in his heart: dignity, strength, and the knowledge that even in the face of cruelty, kindness had the power to hold the line. Whitmore drove away, the car rolling smoothly on its new tire. But in his rearview mirror, he couldn't escape the image of the boy who had refused his money, who had stood taller in spirit than any billionaire could in wealth. Whitmore returned to his mansion that night, but sleep did not come easily. For a man who had built his life on transactions, deals, contracts, exchanges, the image of a boy refusing his $100 bill unsettled him. Why had Johnson walked away? Why had he left money on the ground when most would have snatched it up without hesitation? For hours, Whitmore replayed the moment, the look in Johnson's eyes, the quiet strength, the dignity. It gnawed at him in a way no failed business deal ever had. The next afternoon, Whitmore made a decision that shocked even himself. He didn't call his driver. He didn't send an assistant. He took the wheel of his Bentley and drove to the neighborhood where he had seen Johnson walking. The streets grew narrower, the houses smaller, the sidewalks cracked. Eventually, he found the apartment building, modest, paint peeling, kids playing outside with a basketball that had seen better days. Whitmore stepped out of his car, his presence immediately drawing stares. A billionaire didn't belong here, but he wasn't here to belong. He was here to confront something inside himself. Johnson's mother answered the door. She was tired from her shift, but polite. "Can I help you?" she asked, cautious. Whitmore hesitated. For a man used to commanding boardrooms, his voice faltered. I came to see your son, Johnson," I owe him an apology." Johnson appeared from behind her, his eyes widening at the sight of the man he had helped just a day ago. He stood still, book in hand, uncertain. Whitmore swallowed hard. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I judged you. I disrespected you, and yet you helped me anyway. I can't take back what I said, but I needed to tell you face to face that I'm sorry." The words hung in the air, heavy with sincerity. For the first time, Charles Whitmore, the billionaire, the man who thought money could buy anything, offered something money could never purchase: humility. Johnson didn't say much. He didn't need to. He just nodded, his expression calm but firm. In that moment, it wasn't forgiveness Whitmore had earned. It was accountability. He turned to leave, but Johnson's mother stopped him. "Mr. Whitmore," she said quietly, "it's not enough to say sorry. Change how you see boys like my son. Change how you see people like us. That's the real apology." Whitmore nodded slowly, deeply. "I'll try," he said, and for the first time in years, he meant it. And so, the story of a flat tire didn't end on the roadside. It ended here, at the doorstep of a modest home, where a billionaire came face to face with the truth. Racism doesn't just harm those who receive it, it corrupts those who hold it. Charles Whitmore's apology couldn't erase the hurt, but it marked the first step toward something he had avoided all his life: change. Johnson remained the same boy he had always been, resilient, kind, and dignified. But now his story carried a larger weight, because sometimes it takes a child's courage to teach a man of power the simplest lesson: humanity is worth more than wealth. If this story made you think, don't let it stop here. Share it, discuss it, and help amplify stories that reveal the hidden truths of prejudice. Comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to Untold Shades for more stories that shine light into the shadows of injustice. Because change doesn't start with billionaires. It starts with us.